Hello, hello, my cozy and creative owlets. Welcome back to my little studio and to another fun color along. If you're new here, by the way, my name is Melanie and I am the artist behind the Swimming Owl. Today we are coloring in my brand new coloring book, Charming Escape. If you don't have this book yet, you can get a printed copy or a digital download from my website or in my Etsy shop. And today we are coloring that adorable, cozy Coneflower Cottage. And I'm going to be using my alcohol markers and colored pencils for this page, but please feel free to use anything that makes you the happiest. The very first thing I'm doing right now is sort of shopping for my art supplies, and I'm picking out my markers. I'm going to be working in a very loose triadic color palette, meaning I'm using colors that are sort of in a triangular shape on the color wheel, which you can see in the graphic to the left that I have here to give you an idea of what I'm selecting. So I will be using some pinky purples, some greens, and then some orangey yellows to begin with my markers. I always like to choose a light and a dark version of my color when selecting my markers. So a light green and a dark green, a light pinky purple and a darker one. And that way I have a base light color and then more of a shadowy version of each color. And I always like to start with a more simplified marker color palette, and then I add more fun colors and I loosen up a bit with that planned out color palette. I loosen up with my colored pencils and I add in more fun color and colors that really make me happy. But by starting with a more simplified color palette with the markers, it gives me a really good base to work with so that I'm not overwhelming the whole image with a ton of color that kind of feels disjointed and less harmonious. So when I was initially planning out this color along, I kind of thought I would just do some pretty ambient sounds like bird song and a little bit of music in the background and not really talk. But then I did a little poll and it turns out you guys would prefer either a little bit of chattiness or tutorial mixed in there. So I kind of thought maybe we would do a version of all three. When I felt like I have something to offer you in a tip or tutorial or something to chat about throughout today's color along, I will. And then in other parts, I'll just kind of let us enjoy a little bit of soft music and bird song because I find that to be really relaxing. And when I was actually coloring this page, I was dealing with some anxiety and some kind of chaotic energy that I was having. And so I just needed to do something calming, and this page really helped. I definitely felt like I was coloring a little bit chaotically, but it put that energy into something. It put it into this page and helped me channel it. And so the idea of listening to soft music and bird song while doing it made me feel really calm and good. So I kind of thought maybe we could experiment with a little bit of a mixture of chatting, tutorial, and some just nice vibey sounds. Let me know what you think about this format, or what is your preference? Do you like chatty color alongs? Do you like it to be more tutorial based? Or do you like music only, or maybe ASMR where you're just hearing the art making sounds, which are much harder for me to do. I wouldn't probably ever be able to do very many of those, but I definitely could do music only if you like that, or I can do chatty and tutorial types as well. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that, on what feels the best to you when you're watching these kinds of videos. Personally, I love a combination of all of these things sometimes because sometimes you're in the mood for one of them and not the other. And that brings up the point that if there is ever a art making video of mine that you want to watch and you literally just want to watch, you can always mute me and put on your own audio in the background if you'd like to. So for those of you that are visual learners or you just like to watch the art making eye candy, definitely always feel free to turn the audio off on me. You are not going to hurt my feelings because I'm never going to know that that's what you did. So just want to put that out there as an option for you. So to start us off with just a little bit of tutorial for my markers, like I mentioned before, I start with my lighter color and I put down a base, and I'm not really concerned about like streaking and lines really because I like to use my markers in sort of a painterly fashion because I am a painter at heart, and so I kind of use them in this sort of like flicky paintbrush like motion, and I let there be some texture in there, especially since a lot of the things I like to color are these organic things anyway that have a lot of texture to them. I don't like things to look flat or almost have like a digital feel to it. I love texture, so I'm totally okay with how sometimes alcohol markers dry in a not perfectly smooth way. And I use that to my advantage when I'm blending too. I sort of use that flicking motion to blend two colors together. And if you're new to markers, they dry differently than how they look when you first put them down. And that comes to both the actual color that you're seeing and how it blends, because the alcohol in it causes that pigment to move around, and so they will blend a little bit more as they dry. Sometimes they will blend a little bit streakier too, which it's just kind of one of those things that you got to get in there and play with the supply and test it out and learn how it behaves. And sometimes it's going to surprise you, and I kind of like that about this. I like that it does what it wants to do sometimes, which is why I enjoy being a watercolor artist, because watercolor does the same thing. So if you're new to alcohol markers and you feel a little bit frustrated with your results, just keep going, keep trying, keep creating. You're going to learn so much as you're doing that. And that brings up the point that in every one of my coloring books, in the front of the book, I always include practice sheets or tester sheets so you can try out different materials, different color combinations, and just treat those pages like a playground. So for these flower petals, I'm actually using 3 colors. I'm using more of a pinky color first as the base. Then I'm using a color called Mauve Shadow to do the first little bit of shadow, which is a very, very light purple. And then finally a darker purple right there where the petal meets the center of the flower, because I know that that's where the most shadow should be. And not that we're trying to make this look realistic or anything, but it just helps give depth to the coloring page by putting shadows in those locations. Another tip for you here is that you'll notice I'm working on 2 petals at a time. So instead of going in and putting in that light pinky color on every petal and then coming back and doing the light purple, I'm doing 2 petals at a time, because with alcohol markers, you'll get the best blending if you're working while it's still a little bit wet. So I'm working on just 2 petals at a time so that those petals don't dry perfectly before I come back with a shadowy color. So by doing 2 petals at a time, I can ensure that I'm not letting the page dry out too quickly, if that makes sense. Okay, I said we were going to have some little periods of quiet here, but apparently I just have lots of tips to share today. See what I'm pointing at right here? This is where the marker started to bleed over the line. And since this is another flower petal, it doesn't matter, that color's going there anyway. But this is another thing that's handy to know when working with alcohol markers, is that, again, that ink is going to move. And so if you feel really particular about wanting to stay inside the lines, you want to give that marker a little bit of extra space. And so sometimes you won't actually color all the way up to the black line. You'll give it a little bit of room to move. And when you are layering a lot of color like I am doing for these petals, that means there's even more of that alcohol ink to spread out and move. And so I wasn't really paying a whole lot of attention to this because, like I said, I had a little bit of that chaotic energy and I was moving pretty quickly. I just wanted to get some color down and feel better. And so I was layering a lot of marker here really quickly and not taking into account how much that would move and bleed over those lines. And that doesn't bother me. I am not trying to do this in a perfect way. It's just something for you to keep in mind if you're new to this material. So as I was finishing up this last petal here, I started to think about the story behind this coloring page so that I could make some color choices about some of the other details. And so what I mean by that is, okay, what little creature might be living in here and what materials did they use to build this little house? And so I kind of decided that the little chimney up there was going to be like a hollowed out stick. Looking back, I kind of wish I'd made it green instead, like a rolled up leaf, just because I think the color might have looked a little bit better. The one I chose ended up looking pretty dark, and I think the color I chose for the door was also a little bit too dark. But I ended up deciding these little steps maybe were made out of seeds. You could do pebbles or pieces of leaf. There's lots of options here. They don't have to be this color that I chose. But I like to make sure when I'm using my colors that they're not just in one spot, because I think that also helps kind of harmonize the page. And so I let the color of the middle of my flower also decide the color of those steps, because I thought it would be kind of cool to have that color trailing down a little bit and to pretend those were seeds. And then the little ladder in my mind is like sticks, so I did end up picking up a really warm brown color, which you saw me test out over on my little swatch paper to the side. And so then I made sure to put that up above somewhere as well, by the door and by the little home sign, just imagining these are little sticks or twigs. Alright, and now we're going to experiment just a little bit with the Colorless blender. So there is no color on this marker. It is just like clear alcohol ink, I believe, and it helps move your color around a little bit. You can use it to blend things. I like to use it to kind of lighten things up sometimes, and you just go over an area with this. And now I'm kind of cleaning it off because I picked up quite a bit of that dark purpley color, and so I just scribbled it on a clean piece of paper to clean the nib off. But I like using this to kind of create like highlights almost. I use it sort of like an eraser, but it's not erasing. What's actually happening is that it's pushing the ink, spreading it out, but also pushing it to the back of your page. So it's very, very important that if you're using this, you have something behind your page, because it's going to push and make that ink bleed through for sure, because that ink has to go somewhere. And so that's what it's doing. It's moving to the back of the page and spreading out a bit. So anyway, I like to brush this over little areas and create little bright spots. You can use the Colorless blender to make like clouds and little starlight marks and things like that as well. It's something you just need to play with, and somebody did request that I make like a whole video on it, so I definitely have that in the works. It'll just be kind of like a fun little test and try it out, and some tips and tricks for using the Colorless blender. Here I was testing to see if I could get it to make some kind of like wood-like marks on the door, and it didn't really work the way I was thinking. It probably would have if I had kept going over it and over and over it, but I did not have the patience this day. I was just moving really quickly. So here I brought the pink of the petals into those two areas up above, and then I went with the yellow to go around this little flower. In hindsight, this little flower didn't really work out very well, but that's okay. Then I brought the green up from down below to put into the curtains, so it helped that green show up in another location on the page, and I did like that choice. And I decided to go with a nice warm glow inside the window, so whoever is in there has a little candle lit and they're having a cozy moment inside. And the last two markers I picked up were a very, very pale yellow and pale pink to do the moon and the stars. And I just made these very minimal, very light. I did a tiny bit of a crater texture on the moon by layering the yellow and pink over the top and just some kind of circular squiggly motions. Other than that, I kept it very simple, and then that is the end of my marker usage pretty much here. I gave my page a few minutes to dry, and then I started looking or shopping for my colored pencil colors. Alright, let's talk colored pencils. What I like to do here is I grab out some kind of lighter and darker versions of my marker colors, plus a few surprise colors, and I test them on my little swatch paper over here. And even better is to test them on top of your little marker swatches to see what it will look like. Will it even show up? And so here I saw the orange didn't look good on the brown, but it did look good on that kind of dark purpley color. And then this color surprised me. This is kind of this minty green almost, and I loved how this looked on top of several of the colors. It was very playful and vibrant. So I highly recommend, if you are new to your supplies, new to your colors, or you're just unsure, try this out. And you can even do it on the tester page in the front of the book, or on a piece of scrap paper like I'm doing here. And this works super well to decide if you like these color combinations or not, or how the materials behave with one another. I ended up loving this color choice of this kind of minty green on top of these leaves. It really felt like me. It felt like my color style. And so I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't played and tested it out on that little swatch sheet to the right. So while I very chaotically throw some colored pencil onto this page, I don't always have like a very methodical method to this. My eyes bounce around the page and I just start throwing color in where I feel the page needs more attention. So that was my approach on this day specifically anyway. I wanted to talk about another little topic that I think causes some anxiety for people when they're coloring, at least people that are newer to it, and they're like, but what about the background? What do I do for the background? How do I fill a background? And I just want to take this chance to tell you or give you permission, not that you need it, but maybe it makes you feel better if somebody actually says it out loud. You don't have to have a background. I love keeping it simple and not coloring anything in behind these kinds of images. I think it pops off of the page just like this, and coloring it in this way made me feel happy. It kind of feels like it looks like a sticker almost on the page. Like it really, you don't have to have any kind of complex background to make your coloring page beautiful or valid or finished. It doesn't need it if you don't want to do that. So, just wanted to take a moment to say that. Again, I really like coloring without the pressure of trying to put a background in there. If you wanted some simple ideas for a background, one thing I do like to do sometimes is kind of create a small circle behind the image, so you're not filling up the entire page and you're also not even getting everything in the illustration into or onto that circle. It's like smaller than the actual illustration, but it just makes a pop of color behind there if you wanted to do something like that. Or making kind of an organic blobby shape around the whole thing, giving yourself a border if you want to color it in. But again, you really don't have to. So do what feels good to you and do the thing that makes you feel happy and calm and just be able to enjoy the process. There is no rule anywhere that says there needs to be a background on this page. So another fun tip for you, something I just started doing and I kind of like the effect of, is taking one of my colored pencils and kind of outlining some of the lines with it and kind of covering up some of that black line work. Somehow it kind of gives more of a custom feel and makes things kind of pop off the page even more by doing this. So give that a try on one of your pages sometime. Take one of your darker colors and give the black line art a little bit of life. I think it's kind of fun. Another fun way to use your colored pencils is to use them to put in patterns and textures. So here, where the wood grain didn't really work out with my colorless blender with the marker, I can use a darker color and put some in with this colored pencil here, and it would also work with a really nice bright light color that I could put over the top of that as well. So you can always use your colored pencils to put in some extra interest and pattern wherever you see fit. The other thing I like to mention is that the neon colors in the Prismacolor colored pencil line always make my heart very happy. I love using them. They always add a lot of life and energy and vibrancy to my work. So if you have them, they're very fun to play with. Or if you want to treat yourself to something new and you like the look of my work, you would probably really like the neon colored pencils. So I think there is a pink, a green, a yellow, and an orange maybe. I tend to use the pink, yellow, and green the most. So now I'm going to come in with that neon yellow, and I just find it so kind of funny that I'm actually using this, because I feel like if a year ago you had told me, well, one of your favorite things to layer on your work is going to be neon yellow, I would have laughed at you and said, yeah, right. Highlighter yellow, why would I ever use that? But it actually really does add a really pretty glow to things, and it layers really nicely over things. I was very shocked by this. And the only reason I discovered that was by playing with my materials and trying it. So don't be afraid to get in there and experiment. You're not going to mess things up. You're learning, you're having fun, you're creating, and that's what it's all about, right? The next thing I'm actually going to do too is a little bit of an experiment. I picked up one of my favorite colors, which is like a turquoisey color, and I used that to layer in over my shadows. Right now, that's what I'm doing. I'm putting this into my shadowy areas just to see if I could bring back a little bit of life to them, because I felt like my page got a little darker than I wanted it to be, and I ended up loving this effect. So just goes to show that experimenting and playing can really pay off. Yes, you might end up making some stuff that you don't really feel super excited about, but that is part of the process. If you're not ever making things that you're a little bit unsure about or you don't like, you're probably not creating enough. So as I put in these final touches on this coloring page, I'd love to discuss my next coloring book with you guys. Do you have any themes or wish list things that you would love to see in my next book? So far, the themes that people have been inquiring about include a mushroom book, a book dedicated to either like the holiday and winter season, and then a dragon themed book. So those were 3 suggestions so far. I'd love to hear what you would love to see. So leave me a little comment below, or if you're feeling shy, you could just leave an emoji that shows me what theme you'd love to see. And I'd also love to know, did you color along with me today, or did you create something, or were you just here to soak up the good art making vibes? Let me know, say hi below. It really, really helps your engagement on this video, whether that's hitting the like button or leaving a comment or sharing. All of those things help keep me going and also help send this video out to other people who would like to make art with me as well, so that way I can continue to grow this channel and make more fun videos for you. I have really enjoyed coloring with you today and doing this sort of mixture of chat, tutorial, music. I hope you enjoyed it too. I hope you are doing something creative for yourself, for your brain, for your soul. It will make you feel better, I promise. And until next time, I just want to wish you happy coloring and creating, and thank you so much for being here.